The question in my mind is, how do you create or relaunch a highly profitable and successful 6 to 7 figure business? With so much conflicting advice about the best ways to start and grow your business, how do you get it right the first time? I want to help entrepreneurs make a real difference and navigate the messy world of startup or relaunch. My name is John North, and this is the Startup Secrets for Entrepreneur Show. Join me today when we dig deep with our guests and get you the best blueprint so you can fast track your own business. This episode is sponsored by Evolvepreneur.app, your all-in-one online business system. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at startupsecrets.show right now. So let's get into today's episode.
Hi, I'm Katia from Love Destination, and I've just had a fantastic chat with John on Startup Secrets from Entrepreneurs. We've talked about everything from raising money and how you need more than you need, challenges of startups, pitfalls to avoid, how to build revenue and traction through partnerships, and so many things in between. You have to listen.
Today's my special guest is Katia Loisel, and she's from Love Destination. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and chatting with you about all things startups.
We're at our very first episode, so there you go. So
woo-hoo!
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So give me a little bit of background on what you do now. Like, I guess what we want to do is we sort of want to go to the future and say, like, talk to you the way you are now, and then we're going to do what we call a Tarantino, and we'll go back and have a look. And so what do you do now, and what are you involved in?
So I'm the founder and CEO of Love Destination. So we've been dubbed the Netflix of love, to give you, I guess, an idea of what it is. So it's a streaming channel for everything love, dating and relationships, and basically you can stream like expert masterclasses, films, documentaries, and lots of things in between. So at the moment we are on about 10, 20, middle tens of millions of connected TVs in the US and Canada, and Philips TVs in England. But it's been an interesting journey. That is for sure.
I can imagine.
I have to laugh, because you have to laugh, don't you? When you have a startup, you have to
you don't lose your sense of humor with a startup, because otherwise you will end up jumping off a cliff for sure, I think, because
I think, John, isn't it true, and I'm sure that your audience can relate to this, is that when you read the media, entrepreneurship is really, it's glamorized. It's made out to be this unicorn, this fabulous, fast-paced, amazing life where you're doing these fabulous things and making lots of money, and then maybe you'll have the next billion-dollar thing. But in truth, it can be really isolating. It's, it's really challenging. It tests all of your friendships. It zaps your money. It zaps your time. And really, I guess if you're living your why, then absolutely it's 100% worth it. But I think when we go in and we think it's going to be easy, or it's going to take this long and cost this much money, then there's some disappointment that can come in there. And maybe sometimes we get this crisis of confidence, because actually, I'm sure you can attest to this.
Yep.
Often it doesn't work out the way that you think. Maybe for some people, not for me.
I don't think it ever does, actually. I don't think nothing's ever worked out the way. It's funny, when you go into, they reckon you go into Silicon Valley and ask for investment, right? They say, how many times have you failed before? Because if you said never, they go, come back when you've failed a few times. Because the thing is that until you've learnt from failure, if sometimes if it's too successful too quick, you actually learnt nothing, right?
Yeah. Well, that's true. And I think this is the interesting thing, is I feel as though I fail, within the same business, although, I had a few false starts before launching Love Destination, where I tried. I launched back in 2009, I published a book, and I launched this little online marketing campaign, and we had 12 million views in 6 months. And I thought, digital TV is the future, because I was I was pitching shows to networks and working in media and TV and relationships and body language. And I thought, yes, this is a great way of getting my message out to millions, right? And with a lot more control and being able to spread the message you want than traditional TV, which is very much, it's formulaic. You've got to, everything you want is thrown out the window and you have to do it a certain way. And so I thought, yes, this is a good idea. And I tried my first iteration. And, and then went through a separation, a divorce, and then it was just like, and then I tried the next one. And I didn't know what the heck. And it was early. It was even, some of it pre-Netflix days, sort of really, really early. And then Netflix came, but it was still, DVDs at home time. And then looking back, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I mean, that was never going to work because even a platform that we were looking at paying all this money for wasn't even going to distribute, wasn't even going to provide an app or anything. Yeah. But you don't know what you don't know. And absolutely. And even within Love Destination, I feel as though, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly failing and having to pick myself up again and think, I don't know if I can do this. And then you have this crisis of confidence, and then you literally want to stay in bed for but you can't because your email is going ping, 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 and
someone's always chasing you.
Investors and people who rely on you. You've taken investors on, and you've, for me anyway, that I have a sense of obligation to do everything I can to make it work. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't, then at least, you've left nothing on the table and you've done whatever you can. But I don't know. I feel like the path to success, is there a path to success? I don't think so. I think every time you hit success, then there's another major challenge and it's something that you're going to fail at and feel like a total failure.
Well, I think the thing is, what I've always told myself anyway, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but I think the universe or whatever you want doesn't think you deserve it unless you prove it. So, you know what I mean? Like if you say, look, if it's not working, then you're just not trying hard enough or you're not being smart enough or whatever it is. But the universe wants to give it to you, but you don't think you're worthy enough to do it. So you just keep on trying till you get there. And I think that's part of the issue, is that failure is not what it is. And I think that's the biggest problem that annoys me in schools. They teach you that failure is a bad thing. Like you've got to pass these exams, you've got to pass these assignments, you've got to pass school. And as soon as you leave school, you start failing straight away. Yeah. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, how did that translate? So these kids are scared to fail, and then you end up in a situation where failure becomes...
You learn, right?
That's bizarre, and I think that's the danger.
And I think... Yeah. And you're feeling like you have to do everything. That you're so right, John. Feeling like you have to do everything perfectly and that there's no room to fail. And also, I think in that, because we've been taught that you can't fail, that and if you fail and if you don't get something right, then there's something wrong with you, right? That sort of, and then that means that it's hard to, in all honesty, I have many, many times, and even now, felt nervous going to advisors, going to the board, going to investors to say, I'm really struggling. It's not working. I don't know what's going wrong. We need to change something. What I had in my mind, I did all the due diligence, but it didn't work. And I can't tell you how mortifying it has been, and you probably have experienced this yourself, feeling like I couldn't say that out loud, feeling like I was going to let people down. But actually, in those failures, right, they're your greatest lessons. That's when maybe you pivot. Like, obviously, with COVID for us, it's a lot of people have been watching digital TV. A lot of people have been binge streaming. But, we changed our model to be like a freemium model. So a lot of it was advertising, and then you upgraded. A lot of people have subscription fatigue now because they literally subscribe to everything. And a lot of the advertisers dropped off during COVID. So we were getting a lot of views, but we weren't making any money from those views. And that puts you in a really challenging position. And we normally do a lot of branded content to help drive revenue, where we work with brands on creating, amazing shows based like the Coaster's Body Language of Sleep, for example, about, what your sleep position reveals about you, but they're sleeping on a wonderful Coaster mattress and bedding and that sort of thing. So really aligned. But of course, during COVID time, that becomes problematic. And, so that is a problem. You've got a problem, you've got an environmental situation that you can't control, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And in a situation where investors are nervous, there's a level of uncertainty. And And that's a scary time. But for us, it's been a chance to think, okay, we've got this amazing content. We've got, we've got 300 because of what happened with COVID. And, we had one of our aggregators who we license content from renege on our deal, and then we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So we went out and got new content, and whilst we were doing that, we started looking for wellness content for a new employee corporate employee wellbeing channel, because we have a lot of that content to add to it, to create another channel that basically helps corporates in this environment. So sometimes you pivot because life goes right? Yeah. And that sort of sense of what are we going to do, failure, rather than seeing it as, oh my God, what can I actually, what can this turn into, you're so right though. I mean, we're not taught that failure is a good thing.
It's really funny. I think the words of Mike Tyson is everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face. And I think to some degrees, like entrepreneurship is a bit like boxing. You have to get in that ring every day. You have to cop the punches. And most people can't do it, right? They've just run away and they say, I'll go get a job or whatever, and that's it. And I think you've got to be prepared to take those punches or duck on one of the two. But the thing is that I think that's the danger, is that if you don't, like in your case, it's always, I think sometimes it's meant to be, sometimes an idea comes out of something and it kind of like you have to go with the flow a little bit. And I think wellness is a big thing, because I see that with COVID, for example, if you look at trends, right, and look at what people are doing. With COVID, people are going to get stuck at home. Wellness hasn't been a major focus necessarily. Yeah. There's fear and all that sort of money and all that sort of worry. So you heighten the whole problem itself, like relationships and everything sort of at
mental
pressure.
Health. Mental health is a huge thing at the moment. And for us entrepreneurs, mental health is a huge thing, because I think one of the biggest things I've learned, John, is being okay with asking for help and support. I think that sometimes if you're a founder, you feel like you have to do everything. And, let's be honest, being a founder means wearing a million hats. And if you are the type of person, and probably a lot of type A personalities go into entrepreneurship because, it's I can do this, let's go, I'm going to change the world. Yeah. But the truth is, if you are that type of person, having to do a million things, and a lot of them which are not what you're good at, is confronting. Like for me, that's really triggering. I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and really my harshest critic. No one could be meaner to me than I am to me. Yep.
What you say to yourself when you're alone is the most dangerous.
Yes, right? yes. And so actually surrounding, people want to help you, but I think sometimes when you're in, when you have, and not everyone, some people's families and friends will be super supportive, but sometimes you'll find that if you've tried quite a few different startups, and maybe you've been through this, and maybe you've had some failures, or you've had things that haven't worked, or you thought this is what's going to happen, and then that didn't happen, people might think it's okay to fail. It's okay to quit. Mm-hmm. I just want you to know that we support you if you don't want to do this anymore. Maybe you should get a job. And I think, I have a job.
It's funny, like you get a real job, right? Like
I get a real job. And it's like, I work 70 hours a week. How is not a job, And sometimes, literally I've been, working and doing the stuff at Love Destination. And then because we've had a gap in funding, having to, literally produce content for other things on the side and be getting up at 4:00 in the morning to do that. So literally had 2 jobs running simultaneously just so that we have enough money to launch a new channel or do whatever, because that is an easier option and a faster option to launching or traction than going down the investor route because of the whole due diligence thing. And it's hard to get investment, right? It's hard, and it comes with a lot of obligations. There's a lot, it's not as easy as somebody handing you a check for $500,000.
It's always got strings attached, right? And the thing is,
yeah.
and I think what people forget about investors is they don't think the same way to you. They want to know when they get out, when they get their money.
Yeah, of course. And and depending on where you are in your business, that at the beginning before you've launched, it might seem like, oh yeah, in a year we're going to be making, this many $1 million. But the reality of it is, most startups don't make revenue for a really, really long time. And that, that's okay, but it's not, it's not being devastated if that happens, thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with me, and just still backing yourself and backing your why, and knowing that, the path to success for a startup is a long one sometimes. We hear about these amazing cases, don't we, John, where people just have this idea and wow.
Overnight success, right? It took 10 years.
Absolutely, but that's not always the case, and that's okay. Everybody's startup journey is different. Everybody's path to success is different, and sometimes your path to success is not succeeding at all, but learning these amazing skills and creating these amazing partnerships that then when you have your next idea, or maybe it's a iteration of the same idea but slightly different, that then you're ready. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's, as long as the idea, I think anyways, to make that journey a really short one rather than a really long one. Because
and I think I was listening to an audiobook about Elon Musk, and one of the things he said in the book, or the bio guy said in the book, was ask for twice as much money as you need.
Yes.
So you don't have to go back to the investor. Don't go back to the investor and ask for more money. He said, because that's the biggest mistake he made in the early days, was he asked for just enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem with entrepreneurship, is that you usually just get just enough to keep you going, but not enough to get you across to the next level.
Yeah, well, look, we had that too, and it's hard to ask for a lot of money though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, ask for more than you need, but when you're pitching, like, when we were going out, we were pitching, and we had some significant traction because we had some of our shows that we'd produced that had already had millions of views through other distribution channels. We had some sponsors who'd already put in money. So we'd raised revenue for branded content before we even had a channel. We started, we had 70,000 followers on Facebook, but that was before Facebook kind of went boom, and those followers didn't count for anything anymore. We had a lot of engagement, and then all of a sudden we thought that we could turn that into subscribers, but then there was that major shift in Facebook, and that all went. But then going for, and we found that we were raising money, and normally if you're going in the OTT streaming, I mean, the streaming landscape is dominated at the time by Netflix and Stan and huge players, and so it's a very expensive landscape to advertise in. And, we launched in New York. We lived in New York for quite a few months, and in the middle of winter with 2 kids in tow. It was fun. And everywhere you go, there are billboards for digital TV channels everywhere.
It's funny, in Australia you don't see that, right? In that, you go to the US, like I was in Hollywood, and there's all these signs up about shows that are coming.
Yes,
and you think, wow. And you never see anything like that in Australia. Like the best you can get some advertising a bank or something. Like that's about the best you're going to get in Australia, right? So
when we're here, then we assume that, their landscape isn't that competitive. But then, when we went, because, Love Destination is global, we stream in over 200 countries. We have, partnerships with Hisense, Vizio, Philips. So on a lot of the connected TVs in the US and Canada. But from here, when you're, getting, funding and all that sort of thing, you think, okay, and you've got a plan for marketing and that sort of stuff. So we raised enough money to, build and get content and, produce a lot of original content. And then we went to the US and we had to live there for a while, and it was very expensive. And then the reality of what it would take to market in that environment hit. And then we didn't have enough money to market. And I remember the day we launched and one of my coders quit. And it was snowing outside, and I was just sitting on the table, and I was in tears. We were supposed to launch on Valentine's Day, but the coders of all of our amazing tech partners at Atara were incredible. We had all our connected TV apps and iOS and Google, and everything was working except for the damn website for people to pay.
Buy anything.
And I was there and just like cry, and I think I cried for probably like 2 or 3 weeks, just sitting at my desk, just crying. And, my partner, who's a cinematographer, was there just filming me. And I'm just like, please get the camera away from me. So, yeah, absolutely. And so the financial aspect it's a big one. And it's really hard, I think, to predict how much it's going to cost, because you don't know what you don't know. And even on the best assumptions, and in our landscape, and it might not be the same for everybody's, but in the streaming media, it is changing so fast because it's very new, and a lot of startup, maybe particularly media tech, health tech, financial tech, the technology is changing really rapidly in all of these landscapes, which means that before you can even get, you've got assumptions, you've got all that sort of stuff that you base, and you can have the best intentions and have these assumptions that are based on case data, historical data from other channels or whatever your thing is. But if the industry is changing very, very quickly, that is no longer relevant.
Useless. The data is actually useless. If anything, it's probably dangerous.
Exactly. So we and, like everything, you base it on, you've got all, you get all the stats, and you base your assumptions on that, how much it's going to cost you, how much revenue you'll likely make, how many subscribers you can generate. But I think, and that was our big thing, is not realizing, even now, it's gone from being, like the Netflix type channels to now, fast channels, which are literally 24/7, like Foxtel, basically. It's gone back to that. And now that we had to create a new channel for that. Wow. And then that's driving more viewership than the old channel. So, in some of these industries, it's changing so quickly. And it's really hard to keep up. But my best advice is to surround yourself with people who are in it and know a lot more than you, so that you can constantly be saying, what the hell's going on?
It's something to draw on. Yeah.
Yeah. Help me. What should I do? And so I've had many times, John, where I, question, what do we do? Do we keep doing this? And because you can believe, and you can, how you were saying earlier, John, about, it's not working because I just haven't tried hard enough. But sometimes you can get to the point where you've literally sunk, and you've got that whole sort of sunk cost bias, and you've literally put all your money in, all your time, everything. And you can then start to question, whether am I just still in this because I am too emotionally invested and I can't see
What's
it.
the real reason?
Yeah, and I've many times had to go and ask advisors, had to ask my board, who obviously have vested interest. If it doesn't work, your board, it affects them too, right? And so it's good to just ask the people around you, am I just... And sometimes, if you're having a crisis of confidence, you ask the people around you who know the industry, not your friends and family.
Yeah, not a good idea, right? Because everyone's going to take you things.
No, they'll be like, oh, darling, you know what? You've given it your best shot.
Go get a job, right?
But yeah, absolutely. And I think that no matter where you are in your business, you will always have those moments. Because even if you have success, there will be times or things like COVID that change the landscape, or a new competitor that changed the landscape, and then it is no longer what it was. And then you have to reevaluate, you have to shift, like we're, launching a new channel. You have to think, okay, what is the market? Oh, pardon me. What is the market at the moment? What do I need to do, right? And so I don't know about you, John, but for me anyway, in all of those periods when there's been a big shift or whatever, usually for me that comes with a crisis of confidence where I'm like, oh, not again, Yeah,
it's almost like they're picking on you, right? And it's actually not personal.
No, and I guess it's just, I think that you sometimes you can crave that sense of stability. Being an entrepreneur, having a startup, there's a lot of uncertainty. And sometimes you crave just a little bit of it, and then you get a taste of it and you start getting some revenue and you start getting some traction, and you think, phew, we're good. And then something else comes along that changes the landscape. And so I think that you really have to get comfortable with that uncertainty and
maybe lean into it. I think the thing is, rather than treat it as a drama, and I think some people actually get adrenaline out of it, and I think it's probably a bad thing. Like, I don't know whether you've ever seen that Undercover Billionaire on Foxtel.
No.
It's very interesting because it's got Grant Cardone in it, and he has a crisis of confidence in there. Like his biggest problem when he was on the show was his reputation. He said, if I look bad and I don't succeed on this show, I'm going to wreck my entire reputation. So his whole thing of not failing was because he's going to lose his reputation and what he can do. And he got COVID in that show. You know, the show got shut down. All sorts of things went wrong. It's almost like the show itself went through an entrepreneurial problem as well on that process. And you look at that whole, you know, how it built. Basically, the premise is you build a business, you go to a town, you get $100 in a car, and you have to build $1 million business in 90 days. Right? And if you don't, if it's not valued $1 million, you have to give $1 million. Control your destiny and create a complete business system for your online business. Evolvepreneur.app offers an easy and cost-effective way to build your online business by helping you avoid the pain and stress of implementing multiple systems, giving you the freedom to automate and scale. Support our sponsor by grabbing a free copy of Startup Secrets for Entrepreneurs at evolvepreneur.app. And that's what they've got on the line. And they're not really billionaires, these guys. They're pretty wealthy, but they're not billionaires. But I guess they probably couldn't get kind of billionaire to do it. But it was just like interesting when you look at that. Those people had to start from scratch. And then, you know what they did? It's really even one of them. Look at what's the formula that they went through? They all went and asked for help. They always went and found someone that could help them, and sometimes it turned out initially it wasn't the person they thought was going to help them, and someone else off the side which they hadn't paid attention to actually ended up being the person
helping them. Isn't that interesting? And you know, I think that we undervalue, like, you know, I mean, I work in love and relationships. You know, my background is as a relationship and body language expert, so I'm passionate about love and connection. I believe it can change the world. So maybe I'm biased, but I think that in all aspects of our life, you know, at the core, we're relational beings. You know, we're born to connect with each other. We're born to have that sense of belonging. We actually feel good when we help each other. And as entrepreneurs, sometimes we can feel like we're a bit of an island, you know, like we can't ask for help. That's a sign of weakness, which it's not. And, you know, for us, what was really interesting is, you know, without partnerships and relationships, like, we wouldn't be where we are now. You know, there's no way that I could have personally have gone and gotten partnerships with Philips TVs and Vizio as a startup. You know, like, because our app is pre-installed on their TVs. There's absolutely no way now they would have laughed me out of the building. But, you know, we partnered with a media tech company who had those partnerships, and we leveraged those partnerships. So, you know, if you have a startup, you know, think about as well, who has your audience, you know?
Who has your money? It was interesting with Grant Cardone. He says, who's got my money? All right.
Who's got my money?
Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting because it's an interesting kind of way to think about it. It's not about taking the money away from this. Who's got my money? And it's like, I think that's the trick, is that, you know, as you say, the relationship is key, but how do you get there? And it's sometimes not exactly a straight line, right? You have to go around.
But also, you know, I had a friend who was really great at connecting people, right? Really great at connecting people with investors. He introduced me to my first investor, and for that I was really grateful. And one thing that he told me, which I actually had never been able to do because I always felt like I was being too intrusive, but it's a really great tip, and it's something, is that whenever you are in a meeting, you say, do you have anyone else that you think might be able to help me? Do you have anyone else who works in this space? Do you have anyone else who knows about this? And so it's not about necessarily this person having to invest in you. This person, it's about who do they know? Because, you know, every person you meet, you know, I mean, we've all heard about, you know, the 6 degrees of separation, but we all have, and, you know, from a marketing sort of point of view, you know, the relationships that are of most value to you are the weak ties. So the the strong ties are your friends, your family, the people you see all the time, but you know them, they know your story. They're not going to spread your message out there. You need to get your message spread to people you don't know, whose circles you don't have anything to do with, because in those circles you have access to resources, advice, perhaps even money that you don't have in your, maybe you've exhausted your own circle. I don't know.
Exactly.
And so it's about spreading, spreading out, and then you don't feel so bad. Then it's not, you don't feel like this person. You've got to, sometimes during these investor meetings or whatever, if you feel like you're hounding people for money, they don't like that. It's about building a relationship. And so if you're going in not with the purpose of getting money from this person, but building a relationship, expanding your network, having something to offer them as well, then it's different. The relational dynamic is different, and you will act in a different way. You won't come across, your nonverbal communication won't scream, help me, I'm desperate. It'll scream, I'm here to connect with you. I'm open, I'm trustworthy. And that's, the key to building trust, the key to being able to persuade someone is, to be able to come across as a normal human being who's open to connection.
Don't freak them out, right? Don't scare off the natives, right? I think that's the thing, is people being I think the thing about being an entrepreneur, I think, is being self-aware, right? About understanding what you're saying, what you're doing, and analysing what you said and what you did. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people don't do that. They basically sort of think, oh, well, I've just said this and I'll, and so, well, don't say that again, right? So I think learning from those conversations, thinking about what you said and reviewing it, not being nasty to yourself, but saying, oh, I'm not going to say that again. Like I've done situations where, what did I say that for?
What can I learn,
What and
I think what's really interesting is, often, and I've been in this situation many times in my career, not so much now, but, particularly at the beginning of my career, is, when you're in an emotionally heightened situation, you really want something, so you're emotionally invested, you can go into limbic arousal. So basically, you go into survival mode, freeze, fight or flight, and that affects your cognition. It affects your ability to speak, think, interact. And so sometimes from that perspective, if you're going in and you're flooded, right, because you're scared and you've got a lot on the line and you're emotionally invested, it affects our ability to connect with other people. It also affects our ability to remember what the hell we said. So I think, taking time to really, I know it sounds ridiculous in these situations, but just to center yourself and relax a little bit before you go in, and remember your why, remember that you're actually, if your why is powerful enough, then it's a gift, you're providing people with an opportunity. You're just having a relationship. You're building a relationship. You're having a conversation with people. And I think if you take the pressure off yourself about this is what I want to achieve, and I know some people are very much geared towards that and orientated towards that, but at the end of the day, because of embodied cognition, so our body language, our facial expressions, our thoughts and emotions are all linked. And so if your thoughts are I've got to get this or I'm going to fail, then the rest of you also communicates I've got to get this or I'm going to fail. And you're setting yourself up for not failure, but you're setting yourself up in a way that's not going to be conducive to building a relationship. So I think
starting off badly in some respects.
Yeah. And you know what, and you can go in and say, I'm really nervous. I am passionate about this project because you're a human being and we all doubt ourselves. We all get nervous. And if you're going to investors or to advisors and you're choosing the right ones, then they have been where you are at. They have failed before. They know what it's like to raise money. They know how hard it is. They're probably
don't underestimate what they under someone else has got in the bank, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're talking to them about investment or as an advisor or whatever it is, then they know what it feels like. So if you can connect with them on a human level, and then you're going to straight away form this connection that's built on not you pretending that you're, but rather,
and I think
and then they're more likely to help you, right?
Exactly. And I think the thing is too, like, I like to watch in the Shark Tanks and stuff like that, because what happens is you see, that if they connect to the investor at an emotional level,
Yes.
they will usually get the deal.
Yes,
And they
of
try to
course.
get them through numbers and stuff, unless the guy's very numerical. Like one of the guys on the show might be very numerical and very number based.
Yeah.
But particularly the women will be much more,
Yes.
connected with the emotional side of it. And so you see that happen, you think, well, yeah, it's about connecting with them. It's not necessarily about, and sometimes you can have the wrong investor, right? So you can connect with the wrong guy, girl, and then you end up in a situation where you actually think, oh, why did I even do business with this person? I knew that I shouldn't have done business with them.
Yes.
They had the money.
It's hard though, John, like I've been in many situations where people have wanted to invest and my gut feel is just like, oh, like amazing people, but just driven by a completely different thing to me. And it's going to be problematic. And, there've been many times when I've turned down investment and it's nearly killed me because literally I had like 0 cents, negative $1,000 in the bank. Yeah. Like I remember, oh my goodness, before we launched, here's a funny startup story, in America, and I was filming some TV shows for the channel. And we had done a deal with somebody who was supposed to set up all my meetings in America. And normally, to be honest, I'm a control freak, and I'm normally like, please, I really want to see where we're at with this. Who have we got? But I was going through a stage where I was like, no, you've got to let it go, and you've got to let people do what they're good at. Yep. Delegate. So I was going through that stage, and I thought, no. And they're like, no, don't worry about it. And I thought, okay. And so I I flew them over to LA. I got there. No meetings. Oh, no. Nothing. They didn't turn up. When they turn up, it was just, and I thought, oh. And so I paid for their accommodation, we paid for their flights. And then I went and rented some camera equipment. And in America here, the bond is like nothing, it's like $600 or whatever. And it was $4,000, but it was in American dollars. Oh, yeah. And so it wiped out my account. So there I am in LA. And then I went to the account and there was like no money in it. So I'm on the other side of the world. The person who's supposed to set up all my meetings or whatever, and even they had become a shareholder, literally turned up, intoxicated, hadn't set anything up. And so then I was calling the lawyers trying to renege that, agreement, get the shares back and say null and void, stop, and, literally staying in an Airbnb and having to eat out of the peanut butter thing. And so you will find yourself in those situations. And I think that, sometimes you have to trust your gut. And so I had been in that situation where I didn't trust my gut.
Financial decision, I reckon. Sometimes if you look at it and say, look, why did I do that? Because the gut told me not to, because the gut says, the brain's saying, hey, take the money. The gut's saying, no, screaming, no, don't take the money. But you take the money and think, I wish I'd listened to the gut at the time.
Yeah, or sometimes it's not always the money. It's getting someone on your team because they, on paper, have all of the stuff that you feel you don't have. But something about it says it's not right. Something doesn't add up, but you go with it anyway because you feel like I can't do it on my own. Mm-hmm. So if the gut says that, look, I made that mistake, and it was really challenging for me. And I've learned, I'd rather do something on my own and it be hard than choose the wrong person. Yeah. Because it's really hard to get out of a relationship with the wrong person. Like it's difficult, and it costs you a lot along the way, not just financially, but mentally and sanity.
Yeah, I've been through that. I went through a partnership that cost me a lot. I think it cost me like $3 million in the end, I reckon.
John.
Yeah, because I got into a partnership that seemed good. On paper, it looked good. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when I got through this whole process, I realised he was actually going broke, that I didn't get in deep enough in the financials. And suddenly I'm paying for his Porsche, I'm paying for his expensive building in Perth, I'm doing all these things. And then I spent the next 6 months trying to get out of it, and in the end I had to pay him $500,000 to get rid of him. And then it was a flow-on effect from that, which I could write a book about. But the bottom line was... well, I'd probably get sued by lots of people. But basically, it cost a lot of money because it seemed like on paper the perfect solution. We merged two companies that actually looked logical. The whole thing looked very logical.
Yes.
And what I realised was I offered him too much to get out. I should have halved it. So I always reckon, whatever number you think of, double it that way. But whatever number you think of negotiation, halve it the other way.
Okay.
Right, and then you can always come up, but you can't go down. Like they won't let you go down. And he took the deal too fast. Right? If he said negotiated and said, "Oh no, that's not enough," I should offer 250. I probably would have gone away with 300.
Yes. Well, you won't do that again, will you?
No, like I learned from that, but it cost me a lot of money in the process. Yeah. But I think that's sometimes it's like not always logic is the key to this thing. I think if you feel that something's not right, and you should dig into that a little bit before you go and make that decision. Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, like if you can figure out your customer and where they're going to go and what they're going to pay, and then don't underestimate either way. I think I think
it's easier said than done, though, isn't it? I think I think sometimes we feel like if we go too low, then we might miss an opportunity and they might walk away. Like they're not going to negotiate. Do you know what I mean? Like, when maybe it's a deal, you're trying to strike up a deal with a programmer to build a website or whatever. And we've had this situation where all of a sudden, whatever you were paying them, then all of a sudden they come back and it's like 20 times more than whatever they were charging you before. And you're like, what now? You're like, what? Like, this is how much, what? Like, how did that work out? But because they know your position, they're trying to, and then, you have that fear of thinking, oh my goodness, are they just going to walk away if I say, no, that's too high or whatever, And so, but I think that you can't be bullied into a corner. And I think that sometimes when you're a startup entrepreneur and there's aspects of your business or aspects of what you need to build your business that you don't understand outside of your scope of experience, you can feel like sometimes you need that person, but there's always another one of that person.
Don't think that. It's actually,
and you can feel like you're not going to be able to launch if you don't give them what they're asking. And it feels like that, but that's not the truth. And yes, you might have to delay your launch slightly, but actually it's better than literally getting into bed with someone who's not the right fit or who's going to cost you, I've spoken to startups, before they've even launched, they've spent like $120,000, $150,000 on a website, and not build a minimum viable product. There's a lot of money to spend on a website. I didn't spend anywhere near that much to launch a streaming network.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so you think, wow, that's a lot of money to spend on something that you don't know if it's going to work, like try, and if you have to do an equity deal with these people and pay some cash, some equity, whatever, but know that whoever you're speaking to is not the only person you can use,
Yeah, and I think that's the trick. And it's actually interesting. I was watching a TV show last night, and it's a long story, but basically the guy was negotiating with her for tuition for his child, and she said $4,000, and then he says, I want it up front. And then as it went on, he just kept on decreasing the price. He said, no, I'll do it for $2,000, and then I'll do it for that. And in the end, he said, I'll give you $1,500.
Yeah.
And she goes, no, screw you, I'm not doing it. And she just basically walked away from the deal because he was basically going really deep and to a point where it got stupid.
Yeah.
And so that was the negotiation was ended, but she could have easily taken the money anyway because she was desperate for the money, but she decided not to because it was like he was just becoming too hard for it. Like initially set that thing, so, okay, that's too hard now, I'm not doing it.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And sometimes you'll be in a situation and it feels it feels like it's too hard. And if it feels like it's really too hard at the beginning, a relationship with somebody, and that's in the early stages where they're trying to impress you and they're trying to win business of you, then what is it going to be like when they've got your money or some of it and you're trying to manage conflict or negotiate challenges? How are you going to make that work? If it's hard at the beginning when it's like a first date, isn't it? At the beginning, if some, people are normally on their best behavior and they're being, really interested and empathetic, and if they're not, then you walk away. But that's the same in a business relationship. If at the beginning they're not really interested, invested, have aligned values with you, really important, I think, right? When you're going into a startup, that their vision matches yours, their values match yours, because otherwise don't do it. No matter what, money's on the table. If your values don't align with theirs, then it's not going to work, and it could cost you your whole business, because
bad mistake.
Messy relationships within a startup, a company, or whatever. I mean, that's one of a big reason why startups, implode, right? Because of internal friction, conflict. So and just walk away.
Run away, I think. So that's a probably interesting time to sort of stop now, because I think we've come up to the time. So what's new? What's for you now? Like, what's the near future before we wrap up? What's your plan for the next 12 months to 2 years, kind of thing? What are you looking at doing?
So our plan now is to really ramp up in territories like South America and in Asia Pacific, because our presence there is quite small, and we're just starting to launch on some big connected TVs there. But obviously the next thing is also wellness destination TV, so the corporate employee wellbeing site. And for that's just going to be, a kind of a, minimum viable products. We're not going to launch the apps first. We're just going to start with, the subscription-based website that has, some gamification in it, and then take it from there and start with Australia, and then, tweak all the things that don't work. And then build out the apps and that sort of stuff. So
Australia's the toughest audience. I think if you can sell in Australia anything you can sell easy anywhere else. Yeah,
but I guess for the corporate subscription market, at least I'm here. You can send gift packages with subscription and stuff to each of the HR person. Emails no one's going to read, so you can actually go and hand deliver these things. It's difficult when you're not in the country. So for us, a big challenge has been the fact that even though we have teams and we have, board, some of our board in Canada, our tech team in America, not being there all the time is a challenge. And so I might be making a mistake saying, let's start this in Australia for wellness destination, but my gut feels that it's the right thing to do, and it will cost less. So let's do it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, what you might learn something valuable that you can learn later. I think that's part of the thing, is that learning experience. I mean, we just recently did a test run for a client, and we doubled their membership database in a couple of days.
Fantastic.
But looking at that scenario is that we actually were able to look at the back of the data and go, where do these people come from? What do they make decisions on? All that information is gold, because now you can say, okay, how can I put a zero on the end of that or whatever, because now you've got that information to start with. But without that test to see whether it actually can do it, you don't know. So you go this big scale and it fails. And I think those little tiny tests work much better than the big ones, because you can see what's going on. Yeah,
absolutely. And having learned from our previous mistakes, I'm basically contacting everyone I know in HR and having coffee with them, and, and asking for their advice. And then as soon as we've launched, we'll be, obviously any company under 20 employees gets it for free, but we'll be giving free memberships to every small business we know, just literally door knocking, to get them to test and review and that sort of stuff. So you learn from the first time.
Yes. And I think that's the thing. I think it's really a university of an entrepreneurship, right? You have to learn how to do the process. And I mean, I can start a business in a week, and that will normally take people probably 2 years to do. But because there's a system to it, and I think that's the thing, is that, and your system doesn't necessarily be the same system as someone else. You've got to get those toolbox together to be able to do it. And once you've got that ready, then you know with confidence that you can actually roll something out and be reasonably successful at it, because you know that the process will work.
Yes, and you don't miss those really important steps along the way. I think that sometimes when you have a startup, you miss bits, maybe because you don't understand those bits, or they're out of your area of expertise.
Tied up with it. You just get wrapped up in the whole thing, right?
Yeah, or that's just going to take too long. I'm just going to go forth and conquer the world. And then you miss doing the important stuff. You don't really understand your audience. You don't know, from a behavioral perspective, from, a motivational perspective. You don't know who they are, where they shop, how much they spend, what motivates them, but you think you're going to sell to them. And if you don't understand them, then you're probably not. You don't,
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. We had a really great chat, and I think there's some gold in there. So I really appreciate you, Katia, for coming on, and we'll put the links up on the website, because I had a look at it before, and it's like a beautiful website, and I think it's.
Thank you.
You can see that you know what you're doing, because when you see some websites, you think, they don't really know what they're doing. But when you see it, you think, okay, she's done the road. She knows what to go.
Yes. Thank you very much. Well, to be honest, most people don't use it. Most of our traffic comes from the apps and connected TV. So our poor website is like the little thing that sits there that all the traffic goes
past it. Right? It's like a building that everybody drives past.
Well, it's really there just for upgrades. But thank you so much. And you know what? It's been such a pleasure. I just feel as though I know I can learn a lot from you. I'm sure that your audience can too. So I really want to say thank you for what you're doing as an entrepreneur. I think it's really, really important and very much needed. So Thank you very much for having me.
Based on the response we had when we put the call out, I think it certainly is.
Yes, we need this.
Nice.
Yeah, and thank you, because it's hard, but it's also so rewarding, and it's fantastic to have people like you, John, who just show people the way and, make that the process from go to woe,
a little easier and faster.
Faster, costing less money is good.
Yes, for sure. So
Thank
really
you
appreciate
so much.
Really appreciate you, and thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, John.
That's a wrap on another awesome episode for the Startup Secret Show for entrepreneurs. Just before you go, if you like this episode, we'd be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at startupsecrets.show right now. Until next time, if you're an entrepreneur, make a start on your next great business idea today.